Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Reddit series video from the subreddit HFY called Glintstone Ch.10 Breakfast. We stood in Scour's office not 4 hours after leaving it. He sat behind his desk, looking older than when we had last seen him. He pinched his nose between his finger and his thumb, letting out a low sigh. "I'm sorry that you have to do this, you two, calling you back to duty after I said you had a week break. But you two are the only ones for the job." He stood pushing his chair back with his legs, and he strode in from his desk, marching back and forth by the table piled high with papers and maps. I was struck by his height. He had always seemed huge, towering above anyone in the room. But seeing him here, I realized that he was no taller than I was, which was still big, but not as tall as I thought at first. His force of presence was diminished here, in this room where he was worried. He spoke, and his presence came flooding back, filling the room. "Do you know what the rebellion needs in order to win this war? We need manpower, resources, and ships. We have manpower, more by the day, as beings tickle in, tired and running from the swarm or looking for a new start. Resources we have in abundance. Thousands of unregistered worlds give us their riches and their metal, food, and materials. Those we can't get there, Cerberus buys and we make them here. Those are not the problem. The problem is that we have no ships to carry our troops or transport freed slaves back to their homes or carry our supplies to the armies. No ships to fight the swarm navy. They have thousands of battleships, cruisers, carriers, supercarriers, troop transports, gunships, fighters. We have 3 troop transports and a collection of small ships, only a handful of which are capable of combat. But we can get them." He looked up, his eyes glowing. "We have been in talks with several of the free fleets, and they are on the verge of joining us. With the fleets, we have a start. Hundreds of ships of beings who know how to fly them." I was surprised at this. The free fleets were just that. Fleets of ships full of beings who had had enough of the governments of the galaxy, picked up everything and joined the fleet of ships, all floating about in deep space, beholden to no one but themselves. They had little in the way of a formal leadership, forming into fleets that followed one warlord or another. They were not perfectly civilized culture, but no culture was. Civilization was an illusion in a galaxy where one being could enslave another or nations could oppress entire races. There was no civilization, merely the illusion. The free fleets were just willing to strip that illusion away, letting the true natures of the beings into the light. They were not barbarians, but they were not welcome in most places. "The Free Fleet, sir," Clint said, his voice saying what I was thinking. "They are not exactly the type of allies that I would." "But you do not make the decisions." "I do," the general said. "The Free Fleets are the sight better than the Swarm, if you need a reason, and they abhor slavery amongst them. Every being is equal, and they are willing to fight with us." He gave a little chuckle, low enough that I had not intended to hear it. "I suppose that you two are wondering what this has to do with you. Well, she can tell you more." He motioned behind us as we turned, noticing, for the first time, the being standing at the back corner, listening to every word. The being stepped forward, and I could see that it was Lady Knight, Cerberus's daughter. She was every bit as beautiful as the first time I'd seen her. More even, her light grey skin fairly glowed with a vibrant sheen, turning her skin into the faintest hint of silver. Her wide black eyes were the night sky caught in a bottle, deep and ethereal. Long black hair flowed down her shoulders like water, forming every curve of her body, and there was plenty. I had to stop myself from staring openly. It would not be fitting to stare at a goddess. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see that Clint was affected as much the same way. He did not show it openly, but I knew the signs of his interest. She stepped before us. Only then did I realize that she was dressed in a scarlet and purple uniform that marked diplomats across the galaxy. She stepped up to us, looked us up and down, her voice flat. "You'll do." Clint looked taken back. The brisk tone in which she had spoken was very different from the tone that she used the last time she saw him. Then it had been soft and breathy. Now it was hard and clipped. "I am a senior diplomat assigned to the Free Fleets, as they are a warlike people. The fleeters respect strength and skill. You two are the best I could find on such short notice. You are rather well known in the circle the preachers occupy as formidable fighters and hardened killers." She looked at us in the eyes, locking her gaze with ours. I was startled by the fire I saw in her eyes. Gone was the weak, spoiled daughter of a wealthy landowner. Gone was the shallow-minded girl that we had seen on Patootie Major. In her place stood a woman who could go head-to-head with the galaxy and win. "You two will accompany me as escorts to the flagship Nourishal. You will do nothing but stand there and look dangerous. If you can." Her expression said that she had her doubts. "So what exactly are we doing?" I asked, still unsure, due to the fact that my mind was still processing the absolute change in Lady Night. She sighed, a sound that conveyed a great deal of disappointment for such a light sound. In it, I could hear her thinking, "Why me?" "The warlords of the Free Fleets respect those who possess strength. You two are some of the best fighters we have. By taking you before them, we are demonstrating the kind of strength we possess. Do not disappoint. We leave in an hour. Gather your things and aboard the Golden Hound. You can sleep on the way there." She turned to leave. The matter settled. "The Golden Hound? We can take Susan. She's much faster," suggested Clint. I knew when he said it that it was a poor decision. Lady Night rounded at him, staring at him. "Did I not make myself clear? I am the diplomat and you are my bodyguards. You listen to me and what I say goes. If I say that we're taking a garbage ship, you listen without complaint." Her eyes flared as she spun on her heel, striding out of the door with enough confidence to sink a ship. Clint and I stared after her. "I think I'm in love," said Clint. "Welcome aboard the Golden Hound," chirped a bright-faced skillion, his scales gleaming in the overhead light. We stood in the loading room on the Golden Hound, a ship with a Horizon design, sleek and slender. The ship did not have separate rooms as much as sections, running back to front, one after the other. Galon was the only pilot and the only other being on the ship. "This way to your room." He led us down a narrow corridor running along the starboard side of the ship. It ran full length of the ship from bow to stern, following the Horizon design. The furthest room was the engine room, followed by the cargo hold, and then a number of rooms for sleeping and relaxing, the amount of which depended on the length of the ship. In this ship there was 4 rooms. After that there was a common room and a kitchen, followed by the bridge. We stopped before the room closest to the engine, and the Skallon opened the door and ushered us in. "This will be where you will be staying. Unfortunately, the beds are not designed for such large beings, but I think you can make do." He pointed to the wall furthest from the engine, at the door set in the wall. "Through there is the head, which you share with the room next door, which is me. The room after that is Lady Night. Do not disturb her when she's in there. You may not leave with your head." Clint laughed. "I think my head will be fine." The Skillon raised an eyebrows. So did a number of other bodyguards. Guess where they are now. Clint did not push the issue. The Skillon seemed familiar to me, but I could not place him. So I asked him, "Do I know you? You seem familiar." The Skillon nodded. "We only met for a moment, but you two are the ones that saved my son's life in the station fire. You ended up dropping us off in the Rebellion Hospital, and I got a talking with one of the fighters there. I joined up, and now here I am, piloting the higher-ups where they need to go." Clint smiled. "I'm glad to see that you're doing well." The Skillon shrugged. "It's not bad. I'm Karis." His arm held out to shake. Clint grasped his forearm, and I did the same. The Skillon nodded and wandered out of the room, heading for the bridge. Clint set his single bag down on the bed and pushed against the far wall. I heard a light clink as the weapons inside rubbed against each other. I set mine down on the bed opposite the door of the head. I looked down at the bed in disappointment. It was designed for beings who had not much larger than 5 feet. I was 8 inches too tall for it to be comfortable. Something hit my shoulder and fell to the floor. I saw Clint's pillow lying on my foot, and I looked up at him. "Push the beds together. That'll give you enough room. I'll sleep out in the common room. There's a lot more space out there," he said. "And it has easier access to Lady Night's room," I replied. "You heard what Karis said. There is no way you'll get anywhere, and it'll just make this mission much more complicated." "Fine," Clint said, raising a hand. "I won't go anywhere near her room. Unless she invites me." He smirked. I threw the pillow back at him. He ducked and laughed. You won't get anywhere near, I said. From what I'd seen of Lady Knight, she was more likely to bite off his head and talk to him without necessity. You're on, Clint said. The trip to the Free Fleet was uneventful. It took longer than a few hours it would have in Susan, and so we were able to get some sleep before we arrived. I was exhausted. I'd barely slept since Berea, only an hour or two before we got back to Aldemir. I pulled the beds together and flopped on top of them. It was bumpy and cramped and uncomfortable. I was asleep in moments. I woke to a smell of breakfast, a scent of grilling meat, bacon, if I wasn't mistaken, eggs, and a rich golden smell of something that I couldn't identify. I cleaned myself up in the head, brushing my teeth, and brushed back the wayward hairs that always stuck up after I slept. I wandered out of the common room and saw Lady Knight and Keris sitting at the table, waiting for food being cooked in the kitchen. I saw Clint standing there amidst a number of pans and griddles, from which came delicious smells and airs. I sat down at the table, taking a third place, leaving one for Clint. I was seated next to Lady Knight, who seemed much more cheerful this morning than yesterday. I glanced at her and noticed that she was watching Clint. I took a closer look. You have got to be kidding me. Damn it, Clint. The man was impossible. He walked over, his hands holding plates piled high with bacon, eggs, and, pancakes, Clint said. End of chapter. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. If you wish to support the author, there is a link to the original story, so pop over there and give him your support. If you wish to support this channel, however, there are a few ways to do so. The best and easiest would be to share this video with other people, as well as liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. All of these things tell the algorithm that this channel is at least vaguely interesting, and that may share it with other people. If you wish to support the channel in some other manner, watching my other videos would also help tremendously. Or, if you really like, there is a link down below to leave a tip, or to join the Patreon. Any and all support is very much appreciated, and I hope that you all have a good one until the next time, and I'll see you then. Cheers.